Greetings, my name is ANZA-T, and today we are continuing with the talk on gender-based violence. And today we are just speaking violence, we are also including violence as a whole and violence against our dear loved children. And today with me I have some great men who are speaking up against this form of violence against our women, against our children, and violence as a whole. Without wasting any time, let's get right into the video. What are your thoughts on gender-based violence or violence against our children?
I'm not in favor of separating violence against gender-based violence and violence against children from other violence. I think violence in general is a bad idea. It shows a tremendous amount of insecurity from the perpetrator. And in my mind, this society should change to the point that there is no violence. So the separation of different acts of violence to highlight a certain group of victims is, in my books, it's not a good thing, right? For example, there's a lot of talk about gender-based violence where a couple, the one harasses the other one. But the same thing is happening in a homosexual relationship, and that is as bad. So in general, I think violence itself is a problem, no matter who the victims are. There should not be violence against children, there should not be violence against women, there should not be violence against men. And in general, I think it's something that we as a society need to change.
It's an abomination, and we as citizens of the world, whether you're a man or a woman, should be ashamed that these things are happening under our watch. The question is, what has gone wrong with mankind? What has gone wrong with parents to allow such things to happen? There is no way of explaining it except to say that it is wrong and it must stop now.
My thought is that gender-based violence against women and children is a bad idea, or is a bad thing, and I believe that this is actually as a result of how many people were raised. If one would look at, I'll give an example of normally a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law. In that essence, we currently know that it becomes a common knowledge that the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law, in most cases, they don't get along. And then that looks like a continuous trend. And then it becomes normal in the society that, my mother-in-law and my daughter-in-law, they always don't get along, which is bad. And then we can actually stop that from there, so that then in that case, we can actually be able to stop even gender-based violence against men and children. And then even again, the way kids are raised, we actually believe that corporal punishment, not only that is the best thing for a child to get corporal punished if they do wrong, and then that the society then from there becomes very violent in nature, and the weakest muscular ones, they are the victim in this instance.
Gender-based violence and violence against children, in fact, it is a global scourge that has eaten so deep into our society, and it requires drastic measures to be eradicated. Personally, I don't support such violence because it's against humanity and even against God. So anyone that is perpetrating such acts should be brought to book. It should be condemned and it should be rooted out of the society. That's my opinion.
My thoughts about this is just that it's something that is happening a lot and it's overlooked, and I think it's overlooked because it's not defined well to people. In the space that we are living in, a lot of people experience this type of violence in different ways, which can be committed by people that you are close to or even strangers. And sometimes where it happens that it's the people that we are related to, then that's when it's sort of overlooked, because sometimes there is a way of which sometimes family cannot expose such, they sort of remain it within the family. And then second thing is that some people, sometimes we just grow up in an environment whereby all these things are happening and you all sort of assume that this is the normal way of life. So I think in order to be able to sort of address this, it's also need to start from the definition itself, where everyone is made aware of what is what, and everyone is made aware of what it is and how to then deal with it, because especially in the Black society where we normally don't go that much for counseling and everything like that, even though we grow up in an environment where we experience such things, but we normally don't go for counseling or anything. And as a child, you grow up with the mentality that says this is how things should be, and you end up repeating the same mistakes that of the things that you grow up under, and you are not aware of it. So I think people really need to educate themselves about such issues, so that we live in a society where it's safe for everyone.
Okay, so firstly, it's violence against any gender, whether it's sexual, physical, or emotional. It's not delimiting to men or women, but in this case it is more common in the case of women and in children. It is a violation of a human right, and in general it is not acceptable.
I feel that first of all, violence in general is absurd, immoral, and unlawful. Now, taking it to violence against women and children, it's even worse. I feel that they are pretty much underlying issues in our society that has led to this gender-based violence and violence against children. I really feel that it is immoral, and I think it's something that dates back into patriarchy, because we as Black Africans specifically, we were brought up in patriotic homes, and I feel that this is a consequence of such bringing up of children.
I feel like we're living in a world right now where we have allowed the children and the women to speak out of what happens either at home or anywhere else, at their place of work or anywhere else really. And yet this has been such an ongoing problem for a while now, since the beginning of time. But it's quite a relief that we have reached a place now where they are becoming more comfortable to speak up. So on that note, I'd really like to urge them to not feel anyhow threatened by speaking out, because there is so much that has been put in place for protecting them. And more than anything, their life is more crucial than the need to protect either a relationship or someone, or let alone the need or the care that they have for their children. Because from my experience, when it comes to mothers, there is an inbuilt system that was created for the protection of their children that sometimes tends to work against them, because they do realize some tendencies or some behavioral mannerisms from very early, then that they brush under the carpet, all in the need for only the need for wanting to raise their children in a home with both loving parents, and yet they put aside their safety in all that. So that's where my thoughts lie with whole issue of gender-based violence.
What strategies or plans or actions need to be taken to eliminate gender-based violence or violence against our children, if that is even possible?
As I mentioned before, I personally don't discriminate between the various things. There are a couple of reasons for violence. One is economically based, a robbery type of thing. But a lot of violence is also about the perpetrator trying to be in a dominant position. And that just shows a tremendous amount of insecurity from that perpetrator. So I think in general, the country needs two things: increased education and get the education level up so that violence is taught as a no-no, something that you don't do, plus increased efficiency of the police force. There are a lot of people calling for all kinds of harsh punishment, but that means absolutely nothing if the perpetrators are not being caught. Right? So the first step is getting these people caught, and I'm very much generalizing everything, right? So getting the perpetrators of violence, whether it's a home robbery or a domestic dispute, it doesn't matter. Get the person that commits the violence arrested and through the judicial system. So increased police force, increased actually working police force, as combined with education. A lot of violence in this country is economically related, and education also lifts the economy. It teaches people entrepreneurship so they do not have to steal somebody's cell phone.
From the government side, I think something positive has been done. We've got much more harsher sentences for those who are perpetrators of violence against women. The Constitutional Court has declared corporal punishment in its entirety as illegal in this country. It was eliminated first in schools and now even in homes, so that's a step in the right direction. From the religious perspective of you spare the rod, you spoil the child, that of course has generated all kinds of debates. But I still applaud the Constitutional Court for having a much more general, broader picture of at least trying to eliminate violence against children. Because the question is always, where do you draw the line between what is genuine, loving punishment and what becomes just violence that will then be imprinted on that child's psyche and end up getting that child to be a perpetrator of violence in his later years in life. So the other thing that we could do is visible policing. For all the reports of money being lost to corruption in this country, I believe we could actually double our police force and pay them well to make sure that every second corner of a street in South Africa, be it in the rural areas or even in cities, has a policeman. Because if people are scared of being caught, they wouldn't even do anything in the first place. So now, those are the things that we as a society, as South Africans, and as government in general, if I was to speak like a member of the government, could do. Pump in resources where they are needed most. We have a lot of problems in this country, but the least we can do is to at least get ourselves feeling safe in our own homes, in our schools, in our streets, and everywhere else we go, and not being afraid to report acts of violence or crime in general to the police simply because we might feel that we are not going to be listened to, or that our tipping of them might actually count against us somehow.
I think the strategies will go like this. One, we should break away from all the history in terms of how we were raised. One example is that mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, they must actually accept each other and then stop the fight or the negative attitude between themselves. Two, we must, if you go to many homes, if I'm the father and I have kids, even the mothers, if we have kids and then I fail to have a baby boy, for example, society still feels like the man has not yet given birth, because there's no that person that he believes is going to take his legacy forward. And then when in the house where there's a man or a boy and girls, the way we treat our boys, we already give them entitlement from early age. We'll always be saying to the boys, everything in this house is yours at an early age. And these ones will go and then you'll remain in the house and then you'll be the man of the house. So that is a stereotype that needs to be fought against and removed from the society and to the generations to come, so that then the generations to come knows that both boys and girls are equal. And when the two parents have kids or have estates, that estate should be shared equally amongst their children, and there should not be any child that is considered more superior than the other, like the current actual situation that is happening, whereby we believe that the families, when they look at a baby boy, they always regard him as this man. Even the way they address the child, they'll even call the boy child with the surname, because that's how much they respect the boy child rather than respecting the girl child. And I feel that actually the boy child developed that particular entitlement from there, and then that grows on to a later age. In terms of kids, I believe that the best strategy is to develop the better ways in which we can actually discipline our kids, rather than try to use harsh corporal punishments. Should be able to develop the most softest, better disciplinary strategies that actually can help our kids take responsibility, at the same time feel loved on the other hand, rather than being abused.
First of all, I would say, if someone is perpetrating this act, he should repent first. He should repent, because I don't see the reason why you are deriving joy in this act. People always talk about the government should do this, government should do that. I know that government has some act in place, but individually we should love one another, love our neighbors, and love our children, love our community. If you love someone, it will be so hard for you to really violate or abuse them. So I just think that parents should also bring their children up in the way of the Lord. Because if you are brought up properly, it will be very, very hard for one to really engage in such act. That's what I need to say about it. In addition with the government enacting harsher legislations towards eradicating the act here.
I believe that the world we are living in, we can make it safe for everyone. And as I said, that it starts with education, right? And people need to sort of also acknowledge. So it starts from an individual before it can go to things that the government can do, the society can do as an individual. But it starts from within someone. If someone advocates to a point to acknowledge, to say, this is something that is wrong and I need help. For example, if ever it's an environment you grow up under, once you start acknowledging to say you have a problem, you are in a first step of attempting or solving the problem. And then when it comes to government, I think they should be not necessary to government. When it comes to the society as a large, we need to educate people about such things. We need to have centers, especially men, because it's only us men who sort of commit a lot of these things compared to women doing it in the opposite direction. I'm not saying that women can't do it or they don't do it, but it's most perpetrators are us men. So I think instead of us just talking about it, putting it on videos and everything like that, we need to start having like social events. For example, the fake men conference that happened not so long. If we can have such things where we sort of educate ourselves and then spread the word to each other, and then we as individuals, as men, we start to sort of start protecting everyone around us, and then that can be the first step moving forward.
Alright.
Okay, so I don't think completely eliminating it is possible, or it would be a very tough ask to completely eliminate it, but it can be marginally minimized or reduced. So the first thing would be to set up more stringent, tighter regulations and harsher punishments for the offenders, and setting up clinics, outreach programs for the people that actually have been affected, making them more aware, or making normal people more aware of the issue at hand, so that we can connect to tackle this problem as a whole.
It is possible, but I'm not sure if it is probable. I feel that we need all major parties to come together and tackle this issue. As I said, I feel that this is something that we as a black society grew up with. We grew up seeing our grandparents abusing each other, and nothing was done. It is only now that we are living in this world of social medias and technologies that everything is out there in the open. But these things have been happening for a very long time, and nothing was being said, nothing was done, because nothing was being reported. So I feel that the authorities at large and all the parties involved need to come in and come up with strategies of how to fight this gender-based violence epidemic.
More than anything, I believe that it is the community itself, before we even get to the government, that should create an environment which is absolutely intolerant to such a system. There are some societies that I have learned of that are completely intolerant to any kind of violence to women, to a point that if you are male and you even want to instigate such, you shy away from it from very far, because you know what lies ahead is not something that is not a situation you would love to find yourself in. So let's build a community that really stands against such kind of behavior, to a point that we respect, yes, the Constitution. We do not carry out mob justice unnecessarily. Everything has to be in place with the justice system, but we do not tolerate, we do not accept it, we do not let them walk free, we do not allow them space to believe that whatever they are doing behind closed doors is acceptable. And that way, I think it will build a foundation to a community where we eventually and gradually eradicate such behavior.
If you were to appeal to our government today, what request would you make to them with regards to our country's state of violence against our women and our children?
Okay, I've highlighted some of the points. Step one, stop stealing money. Right? There's a lot wrong in the government, and one of the things is the complete idea that there's a lot of money being stolen. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter. It is an image that is being portrayed, and it's an image that is being perpetrated, and people fall for that image. And they see government as an easy way of making money. Now that money should be used, as I said before, primarily in education and policing. Get an effective police force and all crime goes down. get an effective education, and your economy goes up, and your healthcare will follow, and the quality of life in South Africa will follow. So in my mind, it's a holistic picture that we need to look at, of lifting the complete society up by your own shoestrings.
Visible policing. We are losing too much money to corruption if what we hear in the newspapers and in the news in general is to be true. This money that we lose to corruption could actually be used to beef up our security forces. By that I mean police, and you don't just employ people, you pay them well. That will actually then help them not to be so prone to getting bribes and then looking the other way. So now let's get visible policing. Employ as many policemen. I don't mind this country being a police state, so long as the police don't harass people, but they actually just make sure that everybody can get to wherever they want to go safely and do what is legitimate without being bothered. That's wonderful. The second thing is education. Yes, we have put the laws into place and the proclamations or even court judgments that we cannot be punishing our kids anymore or acting violently against them. But in the end, we have to maybe even make it part of the foundational education program that violence in general, irrespective of who the victim is bad. If we preach to, especially at the early age of education, that acts of violence are an abomination, maybe in a few years' time we will have a much better society. Let's fund education, let's entrench anti-violence into our education system, let's visibly police our streets, and then we can address the issue even better than we already are doing.
All right, thank you.
If I were to appeal to the government, I believe that there are laws out there already that need to be implemented. That's basically the first point. The rules, the laws that are there must be enforced. Our police must be trained in such a way that they take responsibility and they take gender-based violence seriously. Because currently the way in which they are actually responding to matters of gender-based violence is incorrect. For example, I'll give an example whereby if I now fight with my wife at home and the wife goes to the police to report a case of violence at home, the first thing that they will do is to try to mediate, to say that no, guys, talk to one another, sort out the problem. And then a man normally acts like, okay, I'm willing to sort out the problem. But that is where the problem begins. Because they don't hold the man responsible for what he has done. Where even though the women went forth to report this type of cases, they then try to mediate. And then by mediation, it means that, okay, today I agree that I was wrong. Tomorrow I repeat the same mistake. Later on, it will not be just a beating. It will at the end up being someone's life being taken away, which I believe is the wrong approach in terms of how we resolved gender-based violence. If the female or the woman or a child comes to report a case, take that case serious. Do not, as a policeman, try to actually mediate. Because at the end of the day, you will mediate. Now, how many times are you going to mediate? Or are you going to mediate when the person's body is in the back? It can't be correct. So we need to make sure that at least our police are trained well, are actually empowered to make sure that in every case scenario, a man or any abuse, whether being against a child, against the female or against the man also, the police must actually take that as a serious crime, and then make sure that the person or the perpetrator appears before a competent court to make such a ruling in terms of where actually this case should be going, whether the prosecution continues or not, but the court should be able to make that findings. I think that's basically that. And on other issues, of course, we really need to train the police, and then we really also need to make sure that also the appointment, especially in public sectors, is such way that men are given more power to appoint people in positions, and then in most cases that it actually lead to certain violent nature against females. And in that case, we really need to look at how best can we resolve that, because that actually on its own also gives men the power over female, because they can appoint and then they can use that power to act in an abusive way to get leverage over women and children in most cases. I think so.
The government, I hear this thing on the street that there is this sentence, or I'm not sure, I don't know if government has already done that, but I think there's a way to go, because I'm liking these people raping female. Like if I have a female child, imagine somebody raping my child, I will not feel good about it. I think the government should enact a harsher sentence. This sentence is cool. If this sentence doesn't take effect, sentence that is not less than 20 or 30 years imprisonment. I don't see why somebody should rape somebody or violate people. After 2 months or a few months, you see them roaming the street. It's not acceptable to me. So government should do more, and also maybe bring World Health Organization and United Nations on board in pursuit of eradicating this violence. Thank you.
My appeal, as I said, it's first making a platform to make sure everyone is informed about it and what is wrong, what is right. How did you sort of cross the borderline of someone's right? And then in terms of punishment, I would say whoever is found guilty needs to be really punished for whatever that they're doing, because violating someone's right, it's a very, very serious offense that is sort of overlooked. And then secondly, I would say it need not to be only looking at the perpetrators alone, but the people who are experiencing these things also need to be encouraged, need to feel safe to go out and report these things, because sometimes people live for the longest time under such an environment where they are being abused, and they don't say anything because if you go out and you speak to someone sort of say, no, you know what, that's normal, or it's either normal, or someone will say no. Especially myself, if someone can come and say Msisi did 1, 2, 3 to me, someone can just say no. A person who believes in me or who trusts in me will sort of have doubt to say no. So such offense needs to be taken very serious, even if it's people of high profile, even if it's someone that you really trust, you believe in them and or they are even your idol. You need to first, when someone comes to you and say, this has happened to me, it should be free for them to express it. It should be free for them to say it, other than being judged, or even when someone sideline them because they don't believe that the person who committed such an offense can commit it.
So it would have a two-pronged approach. The first would actually be to set up a special task force, or actually train the police to react more diligently towards this, and as I said, to actually set up more rules in place, such as no bail for these type of offenders, have harsher punishments when going to prison, to some extent actually step back and say reinstate the death penalty if the crime was very severe.
Okay. First of all, the Justice Department needs to come to the party. We need to have stricter laws and stricter punishments for the perpetrators of violence against women and children. Now, however, most importantly, people need to be educated from an early age. I feel that from school levels, there should be some courses or some subjects that learners are being taught about violence, especially gender-based violence. And in a broader sense, this should be taught about hate speech. I feel that we are a very angry nation, and it is something that we really need to look into. So the government needs to really work hard from the education department and the justice department. I feel those two departments have a major role to play in fighting this epidemic.
Not to undermine the Republic's constitution, but I'm a firm believer that the justice system in the country is a little bit lenient. That then does not frighten the perpetrators to withhold themselves from carrying on. You know, like you find that there is someone who is found guilty for a rape case and cases like that and so forth, who you meet in the streets walking about in 3 years' time. So I believe that we need to strengthen and be firm on the repercussions of such behavior. That is what I will appeal to our government to really look at it and find means to implement that, and find means that will implement a firmer justice system against such perpetrators.
If the whole world was listening to you now, what would you urge them to do or advise them? You can address your fellow men, and you can also send a word of comfort to the women and children out there.
Okay, for the fellow men, most of you are religious, follow your religion, please. Every single religion says thou shalt not hurt somebody else. So do not proclaim to be religious and not following what you're proclaiming to believe. And for the women and children, we are here to protect you.
All the women of this world are our daughters, they are our mothers, they are our grandmothers, they are our sisters, our aunts. And it didn't just take your own parents to raise you. It took the whole community, it took the whole world to make you what you are. So now show respect to everybody else in the same way that you would want to be shown respect. To all the mothers and all the daughters of the world, I say we are here to protect you and help us to learn even better on how we can help you too. Okay. To the men of the world, we are brought to this world by women. They take care of us, they raise us and provide, literally sacrificing themselves so that we can be what we are. So now the least we can do is to afford them the respect that they deserve, whether they are related to you or not. All women, all children, and men and grandfathers, everybody else deserves respect. Do unto others as you would be done by.
Fellow men out there, the world was created by God for all of us to live in it. God created men and brought a female or a woman to be a companion to a man, not for their or our own abuse or our own selfish reasons, but to live together on this planet and to make sure that his message get out there and that we love each other as both genders and to advocate his peace and love on this planet. Remember, when you are committing a violence, you are taking away that love and peace, and then you become a violent nation a violent world, and that's not what we are here for. For us Christians, in most cases, the best thing that we can do, or the best thing that we can do to God, is to love one another. It doesn't matter whether male or female, but we must love one another and we must live all in peace. And I urge everyone out there to please advocate peace and love. And then when you love people, or when you love each other, there will not be any violence amongst ourselves. So please, let's make sure that we preach love and peace out there to everyone. As for our fellow sisters, mothers, daughters, sons that are still upcoming, I say to you, do not lose hope. We know very well that we have actually stereotyped ourselves to this kind of behavior. We have raised in a manner in which we never regarded you as equal partners. And we believe that going forward, as we push this agenda of equality before the Lord and before the law, we believe that will be one day we'll be equal, and one day we'll look at both daughters and sons as equal partners on this planet Earth. There's no one gender that the Lord loves more than the other gender. God loves us equally, and God sees us as all his sons and daughters. And I thank you for that, and I hope that in the near future we'll be able to live in a country and a world that is peaceful, is loving of its people across the world.
Let me start with women and children who have experienced this abuse. Please find a way to heal. They say that time heals all wound. It's not easy, but it's not the end of the world. Draw inspiration elsewhere and be strong. If you're a male child, you don't have to intimidate the female ones, or if you're in a political position or find yourself in an economic position that is higher, you have to find a way to accommodate people. If you approach a woman and she doesn't want you, my brother, just look for next door. You know, no matter how you are, there's someone out there who wants you. Just move on. Don't abuse people, don't kill people. It's not necessary. It's not important. And also, you have to repent and follow the word of the God. Thank you.
I don't think a word of comfort is an option to do, because a word of comfort is like, whatever is happening, it's fine. We're just going to comfort, you see. But if the world was listening, I would say, let's educate ourselves. Let's know what is wrong. Let's know what is right. And then let's respect each other. Let us respect the women we have. Let us respect the children we have. And also make sure that the children that we are raising are growing up in an environment whereby they are loved and appreciated instead of being oppressed or abused.
To the world listening, gender-based violence or violence against children is wrong. No matter where you're from, your race, your color, it is wrong. To tackle this problem, you would actually have to train the next generation to prevent it and minimize it. So actually teach your children, the next generation, proper values to respect one another, men to actually respect women. Even though they're stronger, they should not use that power. And in the case of women, they know that men shouldn't hit them, so they shouldn't abuse that power. So teach the next generation a set of values to respect one another, not move towards violence as a reactive response. And then for the existing generation to tackle the problems, the hardships that people are going through now, is to actually catch these offenders now. And for the women and the children that are being affected, the people that are being affected, actually, as hard as it is, trying to come forward so that you can receive help from a psychological standpoint, medical help if it is actually necessary, outreach programs so that you can be properly, or it can be properly managed, helped.
My fellow men, I feel that, guys, we are the ones who started this thing, and I believe that we are the ones who can end it. And I strongly believe that most of the men who commit this crime, because it is a crime, they do this because of their own insecurities. Okay, some do it because they grew up seeing their parents do it, their fathers doing it to their mothers. So we as men are broken, and we need to reevaluate ourselves and try to fix ourselves before we can do anything else. So I really feel that we really need to stop this misogyny. We really need to stop feeling insecure whenever we see women progress in life, because we try to show our power by abusing them when they challenge us in other aspects of life. So I really think that we need to accept that it is okay for a woman to be a better worker than you. It is okay for a woman to be any more than you. It is okay for a woman to be more intelligent than you. It is okay. You do not have to exercise your power by physically abusing them. And to the women out there, whatever is happening, it is not your fault. And women need to stop blaming themselves. So I feel that most women end up being victims because they constantly look for faults within them for whatever is happening to them. So they should stop blaming themselves and realize that some men are just simply broken. And immediately when you see signs of a broken man, it is not your duty as a woman to come and try and fix that man. Leave. Because I believe that you should come first. Your own happiness should come first. You're not here to fix anybody. Only men can fix men. Simple as that.
Okay, so my word to fellow women is that they need to know that we're living now in a time where there's so much care for them, and that they are now realized as equals in the community and otherwise, that they should never at any point feel that their word will not be really believed. They need to keep on speaking up more, and with such we will eventually get to a stage where they will become fully protected. And to my fellow men, there is one philosophy that I have learned to live by, which I believe will improve the world. And it is that changing the world is not a huge deal as it sounds to be. It simply begins with your treatment to the person next to you. So if you want to, before you even think about doing anything to anyone else, we need to learn to be considerate. We need to learn to try and find ourselves in the similar situation and ask how you would feel if you were to be put in the same situation as the women and the children who are generally dependent on us. So we should stop letting them down and actually allow the younger ones to learn better from us. Because if we keep on undermining the women before the young